Hello everyone and welcome to Felix's Spacetime. In today's video I have an interview with Sebastian, the co-founder and lead architect of SAGA Space Architects. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Hi, thank you so much for coming on here for an interview today. For those who might not know you, could you tell everyone a bit about yourself?
So my name is Sebastian Aristotelis. I'm a Danish architect and I'm also the co-founder of SAGA Space Architects, an architecture and engineering company located in Copenhagen. And we design and build prototypes for outer space. We just sent our first piece of hardware, a payload, to the International Space Station. It is a lighting system that will hopefully help astronauts to sleep better. And that's a big step for us. It's the first flight proven hardware. Before that, we have done a lot of analog habitats, which are training simulation training habitats for space that you test here on Earth. I personally lived for 100 days close to the North Pole a couple of years ago in one of our habitats. And now we are in the final stages of an underwater habitat that we will test here in about a month, where I will stay 48 hours at about 7 to 9 meters depth.
Amazing. Can you tell me a bit more about this first piece that you've just sent to the International Space Station?
Yeah, of course. So basically, so when I stayed by the North Pole or close to the North Pole, we picked that site specifically to simulate the conditions that humans would face on the moon. You have on the moon, if you are around the equator, you have long periods of darkness followed by long periods of sun. And in northern Greenland, we didn't see the sun for the last 30 days of the mission because the sun doesn't rise above the horizon during the winter time. So that's why we picked the site. And then, of course, it's also remote and it's cold and it's, all these things. But we picked it so it had a realistic problem, because then we had to find a solution for it as well. And if we could find a solution for Greenland, that solution would probably work in space as well. And what we came up with are these circadian light panels. And our circadian light panels, what they do is they basically reproduce the colors and the light from the sky. So inside the habitat, we wake up with a sunrise, then we have normal daylight, then we have sunset and twilight, and we have everything in between. We even simulate clouds, like, so that if we have daylight, then there's a noise in the daylight that simulates the changing weather and clouds. And some days are cold, some days are warm, all of that. And that's with the ambition that doing that, because humans have evolved for thousands and thousands of years on Earth, then we also, there's some specific biological mechanisms in our body that are triggered by the light. And the specific issue that we hope we can help the astronauts with is sleep. So that, we know that 75% of astronauts, they take some kind of sleep medication. And hopefully with this lamp, with this lighting system, they will take less sleep medication.
Amazing. Can you tell me a bit more about Saga? How did the idea come about, and what was that spark that made you want to help build this company?
So I think if there was a company like Saga out there 5 years ago, I would probably not have started it. Then I would just have found a cool place to work. But there was not a company that was doing the stuff that I and my co-founders wanted to do. Like we couldn't find any. And what we wanted to do was, we are fascinated by space exploration, but more specifically, we are fascinated by what is it the humans need, what habitats, what vessels, what vehicles do humans need from a well-being point of view. So not so much to survive, but to feel good, to thrive. And that has been occupying my mind ever since I was a kid. And I really wanted to explore that in a professional, serious way. And then in general, we are also super fascinated by digital fabrication, computer simulations, all these cool new tools that is kind of novel in our, as an architect now. And that's kind of what we have been doing ever since.
Amazing. So you're both the co-founder and the lead architect. Can you walk me through a typical day in your life at Saga?
That's a great question. So, so the day actually starts. The day actually starts the night before. When before I go to bed, even if I want to or not, my mind is always racing with all the stuff that we need to do, right? So everything that's going through my mind at night is like, we have, we need to finish this manufacturing, but to finish that manufacturing, we need these parts, and we don't have that tool, and and this guy is sick, so we need to get this guy in to do it instead, and so it's like a in my mind in the night before, it's always racing, and then I'm sure I also dream about it at night, and then I wake up in the morning, and then the day begins. And the first thing I do is always, because we are also involved in different time zones, so that means early in the morning, there's always messages. We do some work in Vietnam, and we also do some work in the US. So there's usually always someone up at that time, and then I start answering the first requests there. It's usually from Asia, where people are way ahead of us. And then I go to work, and then every day, almost every day, I would say 80% of the time, we have a stand up, and a stand up is basically we all stand up by a shared table, and then we go through what we are going to do that day. And because I'm usually the person that has the large overview, I know all the projects that are ongoing. I also, if there's some new information that I thought about in the evening or something, I kind of tell that to the group, and then I also there's a general update if we get a cool guest, or like there's usually cool people visiting our studio, or like people that we are working with. The other day we had the innovation department of Lego, if you know Lego, like the toy company.
Yeah,
Yeah, so they were, the prototyping department from Lego came by and saw our studio, and that was really cool. But so we have that in the morning, and then the day begins. And then, if you had asked me this question a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have said then I would have spent a lot of time in CAD modeling software and designing and all of that, and going down to the machines and maybe CNC milling or machining something. But now it's a lot of meetings, and it's a lot of making sure that everybody knows what they're doing, everyone has the right materials and the tools, and everyone is working on the right thing, and we're moving as fast as we want to, and we have the money that we need to do the things, and it's a lot of practical work. And then in between my meetings, there's a little bit of time for reviews. So we do a lot of design reviews. So then two of the guys and Rosie, they have been working on another a new component for the underwater habitat. Then we review that, and then I go over. Then we are doing a 3D printed house in Guatemala, and then I go and review whatever is going on over there. So I think my role has changed a lot in the last couple of years, and I'm sure it's going to change even more as we move forward.
amazing. Quite a full-on day then. Um,
Yeah.
on your website, you talk about your approach to architecture and design as Terra Tech. Can you tell me a bit more about this?
So TerraTech is kind of an interesting thing. I mean, we just tried to find a name for what we're doing, and basically, when you are on Earth, a sci-fi aesthetic like we see in the movies is super cool. But when you are in space, what you're really missing is actually all the stuff that we have on Earth. So what we try to do is we try to combine the two. We try to say, we try to say, how can we have all the features and technology that we need, but how can we combine it with the tactile, natural materials, all the stuff that you're missing when you are not on our home planet, right? So terra means earth, and tech means technology. So we try to combine the two in whatever we are doing, and uh, and I think it's I think technology and a technological aesthetic only is cool in movies, but I think in reality, I think you need something else. I think you need something to ground you. Take our circadian light panel that we just sent to space, right? It's the it's the most state-of-the-art lighting technology, but what we do is we are just copying the light from Earth. So we are taking the state-of-the-art lighting technology, but then combining it with Earth.
Amazing. That's quite a good idea, actually. The main part of our interview is to talk about the underwater habitat. Can you tell me all about the habitat, everything from why underwater, what's it made out of, how long you'll be staying in it, and what
Yeah,
testing is being carried out before before the habitat goes into the water?
yeah, yeah. It's a super good idea. So the underwater habitat, we are doing that to learn. It's kind of our, you can't go to a school and then say, I want to be an expert in underwater habitation and space architecture. There's very few. There's a couple of universities around the world that has some of this, but it's not at the level where like there's still a lot of the things that you need to learn on your own. So what we're doing is this underwater habitat that we're doing is an education for ourselves so that we can become experts in underwater habitation, because our ambition is to make a large underwater habitat. And the reason why you really want to test things underwater is because it is the ultimate analog environment to test things for space, especially human factors, human rated architecture vessels, space architecture. And the reason for that is quite simple. So first of all, you have a pressure that you need to be, everything you do needs to be watertight, it needs to be airtight, similar to space. When you are underwater, because you are submerged, and there's some things, there's something called the bends. It's like a diving sickness where nitrogen gets absorbed by your tissue and it expands as you go up. So there's this dangerous element to underwater habitation, which you need to be smart about. And so if you evacuate from an underwater habitat, it's actually quite difficult to evacuate. Which is very realistic to what it's like in space. In space, you also need to, if you evacuate, it's a long procedure, and you need to go all the way back to Earth if you're in orbit around Earth, of course. If you're on the moon, if you evacuate from the moon, it's much different. And how do you do that? So there's that entire element that's quite interesting as well. Of course, if you are outside your habitat underwater, the buoyancy can be quite realistic to the gravity you would have on the moon or in orbit. And the logistics of working underwater is very similar to having someone work in space. Um, uh, so there's a lot of elements to the underwater environment that is very similar to space, and that's why like that's not our idea. That's been used by NASA since the 60s, right? Since the 60s, NASA has been working with the underwater environments, underwater habitats, and testing things at the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. And they still do that. I think all astronauts that are flying right now, they have all been training in an underwater pool or in a habitat. Um, and so we have known that for a while, but it has taken us some time to build up the expertise and the courage to say, and the self-confidence to say, we can do this, but our team is growing, our skills and our tools and all of that has become better. So now is the time. So we've spent the last half year developing this pilot underwater habitat. And it's quite small. It's 1.8 cubic meters. It's basically like a big coffin. It's small and tight, and but it's big enough for one person to stay inside relatively comfortable for 2 days. I could stay there for longer if we needed to. And then what we're doing is we are basically testing all the life support systems and the manufacturing methods the construction details, and also the indoor climate. So that's probably the thing that I'm the most curious about. How can we control the climate inside? How can we make it, how do we control the humidity? How do we control the temperature? Water is a great at heat transferring. So the cold water of Scandinavia and Denmark will cool down the habitat very fast. So how do we manage that? We have a lot of air circulation. The noise from that will be very loud. How do we manage that? How do we mix the CO2 and the oxygen? Is there anything we should worry about? And then maybe the most important thing is we don't know what we don't know. So that means, these are all the things that I can predict will be a problem. What are all the things that we can't predict that will be a problem? When I was in the analog environment in Greenland, there was a lot of things that we experienced that we would never have guessed would happen, right? We had some issues with the rapid temperature fluctuations with some of the piping. There's the that's all the technical aspects of the habitat, but then there's also all the mental aspects. What is it if I'm trying, like I'm basically pretending to be an astronaut for a few days, and what I want to understand is what are they experiencing? What are some of the problems that they might face that I, as an architect, can find solutions for? But and that's basically it.
What kind of how do you feel about kind of staying in this habitat for 48 hours? It's quite small. Have you kind of had any experience with staying in very small enclosed spaces before?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been to the desert in one of our analog habitats. I've tried that. That was very brief. Then I was in Greenland for 100 days, right? And there for 2 of the months out of the entire 100 days, we stayed two people inside a habitat in complete isolation. And it was like minus 41 degrees outside. That was the wind chill effect. And so that meant that we spent basically all the time inside because it was so windy and cold outside. Um, and that was on 17 cubic meters. It was 4.5 square meters. And that was small, very small for two people, and a small toilet. So I have some experience, and I'm sure I will be surprised, but I know that I handle these type of environments quite well. I don't panic. I'm quite comfortable in these environments. But I think the most important thing is I'm not over comfortable. It's not like I don't, like I'm a good kind of test person because I don't initially panic, but I also need a certain level of comfort, right? I'm not like a like like a super extreme survival military trained person, right? I'm a civilian. And I think that's very important because then I'm a good metric for what future astronauts might experience as well. And I have to say, when I crawl inside our tiny habitat that we have here in our workshop now, and I lay there and I imagine, there's a water column of 7 meters above me, and if something breaks, I have to evacuate out a hole that's, that's it's tiny like the hole, and then I can feel a response in my body. So I'm not immune to the claustrophobia, but I think I have a higher tolerance for claustrophobia than most people.
Amazing. Can you talk a bit about the testing that's been going on with this habitat prior to it going in the water?
Yeah, so we do a lot of testing, and it's primarily pressure tests. So we do so every time we make any changes to the hull, we do a pressure test. And just today, we actually experienced we do that to predict some of the issues that we might face. So first of all, of course, we want it to be airtight. If it's not airtight, then there's a problem. Nothing is 100% airtight. There's nothing in the world is 100% airtight. It's just about how airtight is it. Even on the ISS, there will be small leaks, and they will lose gas and pressure over time. So they need to compensate for that. And it is like that with any airtight structure. So So we do a lot of pressure tests. Over the weekend, we just did a 48-hour. Yeah, we did a 48-hour pressure test, and it looks quite good. We did experience one issue, and that is with the insulation, actually, which is quite interesting. It's not the insulation is fine, but because it's a closed cell insulation, the pressurization actually expands and contracts the insulation foam. And that's not a problem in itself. The insulation properties will be fine. But the adhesive between the insulation and the textile that we put on, because the insulation changes in size just a little bit, the adhesion between the two materials can be a little bit problematic. So that's something that we are then fixing today. So there's all these interesting issues, and it's on a day-to-day basis. But then, of course, we go through all the things that we need in the final mission. So we test all the anchoring points. We lift it with a crane. We put it back down. We test all the things that we need. Every individual system is tested on an individual component level, then a sub-assembly level, and then as a full completed habitat level.
Amazing. And you talked about that problem that could come up. How will you and the team go around kind of trying to make sure this doesn't happen when in the real thing?
Yeah, so this is more a cosmetic issue because it will still be warm and airtight inside, but no one could have predicted that, because no one, there's not very many experts to ask about this kind of stuff. And what we're trying to do now is exploring different adhesives, right? So right now we tried two different adhesives, and it worked pretty good, but it didn't work perfect. So now we'll just keep exploring other adhesives, and then we need an adhesive that has a high tolerance, that is flexible. It's a bit elastic. Then I'm sure it will be fine.
Amazing. What is the end goal of SAGA? What is the kind of, when you started it, what did you see as kind of the end goal and of what you wanted to achieve?
So my total end goal is actually is a bit different than what you might expect. My total end goal is to have an organization, a company that is like a dream factory. Whatever you imagine, whatever we want to do, we can do it. Whatever ambitions we have to build, whatever ambitions we have to design, we can do it. That's what I want, and for that you need talented people. You need methods and procedures to kind of to get there. You need tools, digital tools, management tools, hardware, manufacturing tools, and then you need cash, right? So you also need money to do these kind of things. So and most of what we want to do is generally, like, of all these difficult things, is space related. I have to say, the underwater environment by itself, just working underwater is one of the most fascinating things I've done in a long time. But ultimately, in 10 years, or in 20 years, or in 30 years, when someone needs a house designed for the moon, they can come to us. If they need a house designed for Mars, they can come to us. If they need some kind of super advanced, whatever underwater habitat, we are, for humans, we are also the people to talk to, right? That's who we are trying to be. So I'm trying to build up this machine that is called SAGA, and SAGA can kind of take on any digital firmware, hardware, design, branding, manufacturing kind of task. Yeah.
Amazing. It sounds like a wonderful idea. What are your plans for the future to kind of get from where you are now to that kind of that dream factory kind of idea?
Yeah, so it's funny because when I was in Greenland, imagine we are two guys stuck in a habitat on 4.5 square meters for 2 months together, and there I had a lot of time to go through, like, what going there was the plan for a long time, and then I was there and everything worked, and then I was like, okay, what is now the plan? And then I wrote down like a 5-year plan, or like I guess it was more like an 8-year plan. And um, and right now, we have almost completed all the steps on that plan, and that has been in the last 3 years. So, we just sent something to space. That was one of the milestones. We just did another habitat that had a higher quality, higher premium interior finish. That was another ambition. Then we're doing. So basically, we had like these milestones that we wanted to reach, and we've kind of like reached them all. And one of the things that I didn't write down that I thought would be like that would be after my 5, 8 year plan, that was actually the underwater habitat. But we had success with the other stuff, so I said, okay, maybe we are a little bit sooner than I thought. Maybe we are ready to take on the challenge of the underwater habitation. Let's start with a small habitat, then we'll do a large habitat. And that has been the roadmap. And right now we are like shooting them down, all the different milestones. So if we keep at it at this pace, I, I think we will be good. But of course, every day is a challenge. It has become a little bit easier, but it is still very, very challenging doing all these different things.
Amazing. That's all the questions I've got for you today. Thank you so much for coming on here for an interview. It's been amazing to talk to you. And if I'm ever over in Denmark, I'll have to come and see the studio.
Yeah, please do, please do. You can try out the habitat. You can spend the night if you want. Then you don't need an Airbnb or a hotel.
Amazing, thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.